Ever had one of those days? You're at your favorite spot, using the same lucky bait that's never let you down, but nothing. Not a single nudge. It's like the fish have completely vanished, while the guy sitting right next to you is hauling them in one after another. What's the secret? Well, today we're diving into the single biggest, yet most overlooked mistake that 90% of anglers make when mixing essences and attractants. It's the deadly sin of fishing that turns your perfect bait into a literal fish repellent. I promise, by the end of this video, you'll look at your bag of dips and boosters in a whole new way. You might even realize exactly why your last few trips didn't go as planned. But first, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what's your absolute favorite scent for fishing? I bet we'll find a lot of people using the same secret weapons. Let's start with the basics. Why is scent so critical? For a fish, its sense of smell is a primary tool for survival and finding food. In murky water, where they can't see much, it's the nose that leads a carp or a bream straight to the meal. Tackle companies know this, which is why store shelves are packed with hundreds of bottles, everything from strawberry and plum to monster crab and garlic. But this massive variety has created a dangerous illusion. The idea that the more complex and intense your scent bouquet is, the more attractive it becomes. We're told to constantly experiment, to mix, to create our own secret recipes. And that is exactly where it all goes wrong. Anglers, especially beginners, chase that magic ingredient by dumping everything into the bucket at once, committing the ultimate sin we're going to break down in detail today. The quickest way to fail is to fall for the more is better trap. It's basic psychology. We think if a little strawberry dip works, then adding a pineapple booster and a splash of creamy syrup will make it even better. But that's just not how it works. Imagine being served a bowl of hearty soup, but then someone adds a spoonful of honey, some curry powder, and a drizzle of chocolate sauce. Would you want to eat that? Probably not. Fish feel the exact same way. Their sense of smell is highly tuned to specific food signals. When you overload your bait, you aren't sending a clear, come and get it message. You're hitting their receptors with a chaotic, overwhelming blast. Instead of identifying a meal, the fish senses something confusing and potentially dangerous. This is the absolute golden rule. Over-scenting your bait, especially with clashing aromas, is the fastest way to clear out your spot. Instead of a magnet, you've created a chemical no-go zone that fish will avoid at all costs. Remember, less is more. One clean, distinct scent will almost always work better than a loud, messy cocktail. Let's dive into the chemistry of it all. What really happens when you mix different scents? Essentially, you're starting a chemical war right in your bait bucket. Most attractants are built on different bases. Some are alcohol-based, some are oil-based, and others use glycerin. Each one behaves differently. Alcohol-based scents dissolve fast, creating a powerful but short-lived trail in the water. Oil is the exact opposite. It doesn't mix with water, so it clings to the bait and forms a thin film on the surface. Glycerin is the middle ground, sweet and viscous. When you mindlessly mix an alcohol attractant with an oil dip, you don't get the best of both worlds. In fact, they can react and create entirely new compounds with a scent you never intended. Or even worse, they can neutralize each other. The oil can actually lock in the volatile alcohol compounds, preventing the scent from spreading. You end up with bait that smells strong on the bank, but is practically invisible underwater. That's the ultimate mistake, mixing chemically incompatible ingredients without understanding how they work. You aren't boosting the signal, you're just distorting it, or killing it entirely. Another major mistake is completely overlooking the natural aroma of your bait. Many anglers forget that their base mix, whether it's ground bait, pellets, particles, or boilies, already carries its own organic scent. Fresh corn, toasted nuts, and fish meal are the exact aromas fish recognize and trust as natural food. When you drench this natural base in harsh synthetic essences, you're effectively drowning out that organic signal. you're essentially shouting at the fish. This isn't real food, it's a trap. Instead of subtly enhancing or complementing the base, you're masking it entirely. The key is synergy, not substitution. If you're using a fish meal-based mix, it makes sense to sharpen it with a light touch of crab or squid, rather than soaking it in a concentrated tutti-frutti essence. The goal is to make the natural scent more vivid and attractive, not to replace it with something completely alien. Remember, your job is to convince the fish that your bait is the most delicious natural meal in the water, not a perfume shop at the bottom of the lake. А теперь о вечном противостоянии сладкое против специй. Это, пожалуй, одна из самых частых ошибок при создании микса. Часто бывает так. Рыболов берет отличный фруктовый аромат, например, сливу, и решает усилить его чесноком или чем-то рыбным, вроде кальмара. Логика кажется простой. Раз рыбе нравится и то, и другое, значит вместе будет еще лучше. Но на практике это превращается в полную катастрофу. Эти запахи находятся на разных полюсах. Для рыбы такой коктейль– настоящий когнитивный диссонанс. Представьте себе клубничное варенье в прикуску с селедкой. Ну как аппетитно! Вот и для рыбы это звучит так же. В природе подобных сочетаний не существует, поэтому для рыбы это не приглашение к обеду, а мощный сигнал опасности. Значит ли это, что запахи вообще нельзя смешивать? Конечно, можно, но делать это нужно с умом. Например, хорошо работают сочетания внутри одной группы– слива с ананасом или перец с кориандром. Можно аккуратно добавить к сладкому профилю ореховые или сливочные нотки. Но пытаться скрестить радикально разные группы– фрукты с рыбой или сладости с резкими специями– это почти всегда гарантированный провал. Это все равно, что пытаться совместить оперу и тяжелый металл в одной композиции. Музыки не получится, будет одна какофония. Many anglers overlook a critical detail. Seasonal scent compatibility. A bait that works wonders in July's warm water can be completely useless, or even drive fish away, come October. During the summer when the water is warm, a fish's metabolism is at its peak. They need fast energy, which is why sweet, fruity, high-carb aromas are so effective. Strawberry, banana, plum, and tutti frutti are absolute classics for the heat. But as the water cools down, the game changes entirely. The fish's metabolism slows, and their instinct shifts toward nutrient-dense, protein-rich food. This is the time for spices and savory, meaty profiles. Garlic, black pepper, krill, squid, and liver become your best friends. The biggest mistake you can make is trying to mix these two worlds. For example, adding a splash of strawberry for sweetness to a spicy autumn mix. In cold water, that sweet scent feels alien and unnatural. It creates a scent conflict that sends a confusing signal. A fish looking for a high-protein meal will be put on edge by that out-of-place sweetness. The bottom line is simple. Always adapt your scent strategy to the season and the water temperature. Don't go looking for a universal year-round cocktail. It simply doesn't exist. We often forget that every body of water has its own unique signature scent. A peat lake smells completely different from a sandy river or a silty pond. To a fish, this natural aroma is home. It's what they know, and it's where they feel safe. The moment your bait hits the water, its scent begins to interact with that environment. This is where a lot of anglers trip up. If you use a scent that's too harsh, too chemical, or just plain alien to that spot, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. It practically screams artificial. Think about it. In a silty pond where organic decay is the norm, the subtle earthy aroma of a bloodworm or a nightcrawler feels perfectly natural. But a sharp, chemical pineapple? That's going to set off alarm bells. The biggest mistake you can make is trying to drown out the natural smell of the water with an overpowering attractant. Instead, you want your scent to sit in harmony with the environment, standing out just enough to suggest an easy meal, but not enough to raise suspicion. Before you mix your ground bait, take a moment to smell the water and the soil at the bank. Try to understand the essence of the water and pick a scent that works with it rather than one that's in constant conflict. Let's talk about olfactory overload, but from the fish's perspective. We've touched on this before, but it's crucial to understand the actual mechanism behind it. A fish's sense of smell is an incredibly sensitive chemical sensor. It can pick up tiny traces of substances in the water from a huge distance, which is how they find food and stay out of danger. Now imagine you dump a concentrated cocktail of potent essences right into your fishing spot. To a fish, that's the equivalent of a flashbang going off right next to its head. It's not just strong, it's deafening. It triggers a state of shock and an immediate panic response. Instead of calmly swimming over to see what smells so good, the fish bolts away from the epicenter of that chemical explosion. The signal is simply too intense and too unnatural for them to process. Think of it like this. You're in the woods, trying to sniff out some wild mushrooms, and suddenly, someone shoves an open bottle of industrial-strength bleach under your nose. You're not going to find any mushrooms. You're going to jump back and run for air. That's exactly what happens underwater when we go overboard with additives. We aren't attracting fish. We're creating an invisible but impenetrable barrier that sends them swimming for their lives. There's a crucial concept in baiting that many anglers overlook: the cloud strategy versus the core strategy. These are two completely different approaches, and mixing them up is a massive mistake. Cloud attractants are your light, volatile liquids, typically alcohol-based. Their job is to dissolve rapidly in the water column, creating a large but temporary scent trail to pull fish in from a distance. Think of sprays or thin boosters you add to your mixing water. They spark curiosity and bring fish to the area, but they don't linger. Core attractants are the exact opposite. These are thick, heavy, often oil or glycerin-based liquids. Their purpose is to stay put, clinging to your hook bait or the feed on the lake bed. They provide a concentrated food signal right where your rig is, keeping the fish locked on the spot once they arrive. Your heavy hook bait dips are the perfect example. We'll just clump your particles together. And sit on the bottom like a dead weight. On the flip side, a light spray on your hook bait will wash away in seconds, leaving it odorless just when you need it most. You have to draw a clear line. Use one to call them in, and the other to keep them there. If you blur those lines, you're left with a weak strategy that doesn't do either job effectively. Let's debunk one of the biggest myths in fishing: the secret super mix. A lot of anglers believe there's some magic combination of 5, 7, or even 10 different scents that'll drive any fish wild. They spend years and a ton of money mixing everything on the shop shelves, hoping to find that holy grail recipe. But the truth is, it doesn't exist. The more complex your scent profile is, the more unpredictable your results become. You'll never know which of those 10 ingredients actually worked, and which one scared the fish away. Plus, the more stuff you add, the more likely those scents are to clash with each other. Successful fishing isn't alchemy. It's about science and observation. Instead of mixing these confusing cocktails, you're much better off working with 1 or 2 proven aromas. This lets you understand exactly what the fish are responding to on any given day. If the bites stop, you can swap one scent for another and see the result immediately. When you've got 10 different smells in your bait, you're just fishing in the dark. Keep it simple. That's the real key to consistent results, not chasing some mythical super mix that isn't even real. Let's dive back into the technical side and break down the foundations of bait essences. Understanding this is the real secret to avoiding common mistakes. It all comes down to the big 3: alcohol, glycerin, and oil. First, alcohol-based essences. Their main advantage is that they dissolve perfectly in any water temperature, creating a fast and expansive scent cloud. The downside? They wash out just as quickly. These are your go-to for sprays, or for boosting a spot mix when you need to pull fish in from a distance. Next up, glycerin-based essences. Glycerin is a sweet, thick, and heavy substance. It also dissolves in water, but much more slowly than alcohol. It adds weight to your feed and provides that sweet taste fish love. It's a perfect choice for base mixes or for dipping your hook baits. Finally, we have oil-based essences. As you know, oil and water don't mix. The oil coats the bait particles, which means the aroma is released very slowly. It also leaves a thin film on the water's surface. These are ideal for cold water and for hook baits that need to stay fragrant for a long time. The cardinal sin of bait making is mixing these bases in the same container. If you pour an alcohol-based flavor into an oil-based one, the liquids will separate, and the result will be completely unpredictable. Don't try to play chemist by mixing different bases together. Use them separately and use them for the right job. Most anglers don't give enough thought to the factor of time, but here is the thing. Your bait's aroma isn't a constant, it's a dynamic process. The mix you prepare on the bank will smell completely different after an hour or two underwater. When you start blending multiple components, you lose all control over the outcome. Every aromatic compound has its own level of volatility and staying power. The lightest fractions strike first. They disperse quickly to create that initial attraction signal. The heavier, more stable elements cling to the feed much longer. Think of a complex cocktail as an aromatic symphony that never stops shifting. It might smell great on the shore, but once those light, fruity notes evaporate, you could be left with a harsh chemical aftertaste sitting on the bottom. A fish, drawn in by the initial pleasant scent, arrives at the spot only to be met by something completely off-putting. By mixing different essences, you are gambling with that process. But by using a single, pure aroma, you know exactly how it will behave over time. You stay in control, and you can be certain your bait won't hit the fish with any nasty surprises. Another cardinal sin in fishing is trying to please every fish at once. I'm talking about the mistake of targeting multiple species with a single scent profile. Picture this. An angler wants to catch both bream and carp. He knows bream are drawn to coriander, while carp have a sweet tooth for strawberry. So, he tosses both into his bait, hoping for a double win. In reality, the results are usually disappointing. You'll likely end up catching nothing at all. The reason is simple. You're sending out a conflicting food signal. Every species has specific preferences shaped by millions of years of evolution. When you blur those lines by mixing scents meant for different fish, you end up with something middle of the road, an aroma that isn't quite right for the bream and doesn't interest the carp. Beyond that, you risk attracting the wrong crowd. A generic, overly sweet mix might draw in a swarm of small roach or bleak that will dominate the spot, making it impossible for the larger fish to even get close. The professional approach is to pick your target and stick to the specific aromas that species loves. If you want to go after different types of fish, it's much better to prepare two separate baits or switch your strategy mid-session. Don't try to cook a universal soup for everything in the lake. It just doesn't work. Don't overlook the visual appeal of your bait. Even though we usually focus on scent, mixing different liquids can drastically change the color and texture of your mix. Many dips and boosters are loaded with bright dyes, vibrant reds, yellows, and greens, while others, especially oil-based ones, can be dark and murky. If you mix a neon yellow pineapple booster with a dark brown squid dip, for example, you'll probably end up with a dull, muddy-looking bait. For fish, especially in clear water, color is a huge factor. A pop-up needs to be vibrant to stand out on the bottom, and a grain mix should look as natural as possible. If you turn your offering into a weird, murky mess, you might actually end up spooking the fish instead of attracting them. Also, keep in mind that thick syrups can change your bait's mechanics, making it too sticky or unresponsive in the water. So, when you're mixing additives, think about the final look and the physical properties, not just the smell. Sometimes using a colorless flavor is the best way to keep your presentation looking its best. Ignore this is to make a fundamental mistake. In warm water, molecules move rapidly, spreading scents much further and with far more intensity. That's why in the summer, Even a tiny drop of flavoring goes a long way. Cold water is a different story. Diffusion slows to a crawl, and scents barely move. For an attractant to work in the cold, it needs to be alcohol-based to dissolve properly, or the concentration has to be dialed in perfectly. The biggest error is sticking to summer tactics in the winter, and vice versa. Take oil-based dips. In icy water, they thicken up, turn solid, and trap the scent inside. But if you use a high-powered alcohol attractant in the peak of summer, the aroma will be so aggressive it'll spook every fish in sight. Mixing different bases only complicates things, making your bait's performance totally unpredictable. Always check the thermometer before you choose your scent and your dose. One crucial detail that often gets overlooked is the harmony between your hook bait and your feed. You can spend hours crafting the perfect ground bait with a subtle, inviting aroma, only to ruin it by using a hook bait soaked in an overpowering dip with a completely different scent. Think about it from the fish's perspective. It's drawn to your spot by one specific smell, but when it gets there, it finds a single, loud bait that smells totally unnatural. To a wary fish, that's a red flag, a classic sign of a trap. The professional approach is to treat your hook bait as a logical extension of your feed. It should share the same scent profile, perhaps just slightly more concentrated, to act as the cherry on top. This is what we call a consistent baiting program. When you mix clashing scents, you break that signal. You're giving the fish two conflicting messages, which only makes them more cautious. Always aim for a hook bait and feed that belong to the same scent family or complement each other perfectly. They should work together, not fight each other. Now, let's talk about the human factor. As anglers, we tend to choose scents based on our own preferences, things like vanilla, caramel, or fresh fruit. We subconsciously project those tastes onto the fish, assuming they'll love the same things we do. But that's a major misconception. For a fish, a scent isn't a source of pleasure. It's purely data about potential food. Many smells we find pleasant are completely alien to the underwater world. A heavy, bakery-style vanilla scent might not be perceived as food at all. To a fish, it might just smell like strange, unnatural chemicals. The mistake here is anthropomorphizing the fish, treating its tastes like our own. You have to try and think like a fish. What is it actually eating in this specific body of water? Bloodworms, snails, algae, or maybe berries that have fallen into the water. Those are the scents that feel natural and safe to them. Of course, synthetic attractants work too, but their power usually isn't in how they mimic nature. It's in how they trigger specific receptors. This is where dosage becomes critical. A scent we find pleasant can easily turn into a chemical alarm if it's too concentrated. So, when you're choosing an attractant, don't ask yourself, do I like this smell? Instead, ask, will this scent make sense to the fish under these specific conditions? Let's look at a classic mistake, trying to mix tutti frutti with squid and octopus. These are two legendary scents in the carp fishing world. One is sweet and fruity, the other is sharp and fishy. It's tempting to think that by combining them, you're creating a magic bait that works in any situation. No, in practice, it almost never works. Here's why. First off, they belong to completely different flavor profiles. Essentially, you're mixing carbs and proteins into one bottle. It just doesn't feel natural. Secondly, they're meant for totally different conditions. Tutti frutti is a warm water staple, perfect for active fish looking for a quick energy boost. Squid is a powerhouse for cold water, when carp are hunting for high-quality protein. By mixing them, you don't get a year-round winner. You get a bait that performs worse than either component would on its own in the right conditions. In the summer, the fishy scent can be too heavy. In the autumn, the fruit feels out of place. It's a perfect example of how chasing complexity and versatility leads to something completely illogical. Don't try to mix oil and water. Use the right tool for the right time and the right place. We've spent a lot of time talking about the downsides of overscenting. So now, let's focus on the opposite approach. the power of restraint. Sometimes, the best attractant is almost no attractant at all. In high-pressure spots where fish are constantly bombarded with tons of flavored bait, they get suspicious. They start to shy away from anything with a strong artificial smell. In these conditions, the angler who keeps things natural is the one who wins. A simple mix that smells like fresh grain, or a hook bait with just a faint hint of nut, can be your secret weapon. To the fish, it feels safe, like real food. This doesn't mean you have to ditch additives entirely, but you do need to master the microdose. We're talking just a few drops for several pounds of feed. You want a subtle trail that piques their curiosity rather than a scent that screams at them. The biggest mistake most anglers make is not knowing when to stop. They keep pouring it in, terrified it won't be enough, when the reality is, it's already too much. Learn to trust the natural aroma of your quality ingredients. Most of the time, that is more than enough. So, what do you do if you've already committed the ultimate sin and realized you went way overboard with the scent? Is it possible to save the situation? Well, in some cases, you actually can resuscitate your bait. The simplest way is to dilute it. If you realize the mix is smelling too strong, just add an equal amount of base mix with no added flavor. This will cut the overall concentration in half. Give it a thorough mix and let it sit for a bit, so the aromas can redistribute. Now, if you overdid it with a liquid attractant during the mixing stage, try adding some dry, absorbent ingredients, like breadcrumbs, crushed biscuits, or even powdered milk. They'll soak up the excess moisture and aroma, helping to balance the scent. But keep in mind, these are just emergency measures. If you've mixed incompatible scents that have already started to react, it's probably a lost cause. At that point, it's better to just scrap it and start fresh. Ultimately, the best way to handle a mistake is to not make it in the first place. Approach the flavoring process thoughtfully and always take your time. To wrap things up, I want to share one simple golden rule. This is for anyone just starting out with fishing scents, or for those who have gotten lost in a sea of endless experiments. It's the rule of one. For a full season, or ideally 2, pick just 1 or 2 high-quality scents from different profiles. For example, 1 sweet and fruity scent for the summer, and 1 spicy or fish-based scent for the fall. And work only with them. Your goal isn't to find a magic mix. It's to learn exactly how that specific scent performs. Experiment with different concentrations. Use it on different bodies of water. Watch how the fish react in different weather. Keep a logbook of your observations. This is the only way to truly understand the nature of attractants. You'll develop a feel for the right dosage and learn instinctively when a scent is working and when it's not. Once you've mastered one component, you can carefully add a second because you'll understand how they interact. Jumping from one scent to another and mixing everything together is a path of chaos. The master's path is built on a deep understanding of the basics. Start simple, and that is what will lead you to consistent high-level results. زين، خلونا نلخص اللي قلناه. تكلمنا عن أشياء واجد، بس كلها ترجع لنفس النقطة. أكبر غلطة تسويها لما تخلط النكهات هي العشوائية. يعني لا تعتقد أنك كل ما زدت التعقيد والكمية بتكون النتيجة أحسن. السر الحقيقي يا شباب هو التوازن والاعتدال وفهم المكان والظروف اللي تصيد فيها. عرفنا أن بعض القواعد الكيميائية ممكن تتفاعل مع بعض بشكل عكسي، وإن خلط روايح من مجموعات مختلفة مثل الفواكه مع البهارات ممكن يهرب السمك بدل ما يجذبه. وأحيانا أحسن ريحة هي إنك ما تستخدم ريحة البر. أتمنى الحين لما تشوفوا رفوف الجاذبات والروائح في المحل ما تشوفوها مجرد قناني، بل كأنها أدوات في يد فنان لازم تستخدموها بذكاء وتركيز. مشكورين إنكم تابعتوا الفيديو للنهاية. إذا استفدتوا من هالمعلومات لا تنسوا اللايك والاشتراك في القناة عشان توصلكم أسرار الصيد أول بأول وفعلوا جرس التنبيهات. والحين سؤالي لكم، شو أغرب خلطة روايح جربتوها؟ وهل جابت نتيجة ولا كانت خيبة أمل؟ شاركونا قصصكم في التعليقات وخلونا نتناقش.